Okay, I need to ask this and please don't judge me. Has anyone here ever had to defend themselves, I mean really defend themselves and felt, I don't know, a kind of sick satisfaction afterward? Is that a normal part of the trauma or am I some kind of monster? My husband, well, my estranged husband, Kevin, is in the hospital, and I'm the one who put him there. He cornered me in the garage about 3 hours ago. I came home from my shift at the diner and he was just there, waiting, his eyes, God, they weren't his eyes. They were just these black, shiny holes full of a kind of frantic emptiness I'd never seen before. He had a gun, a small, ugly black thing he must have bought somewhere. He just pointed it at my chest, right over my heart, and told me I wasn't going to leave him. My whole life didn't flash before my eyes, nothing so poetic. My bladder just felt like it was going to let go, and all I could think was, not here, not in the damn garage next to the lawnmower. He pulled the trigger, I swear to God I heard it. Glig. The sound was so small, so pathetic, it was nothing. For a second the whole world just stopped. We both stared at each other, him with the gun, me with my hands half raised. Then his face twisted, this horrible, frustrated rage, and he did it again. Click. That second click did something to me. It was like a switch flipped from prey to something else. My workbench was right there. I had been trying to fix the old sedan, the one that leaks oil. And there was a wrench, a heavy one, I don't even remember grabbing it. I just remember the solid weight of it in my hand. And then, well, then he was on the floor, the police were here, they took my statement. They called it a clear case of self-defense, especially after they saw the gun. I should be a wreck, right? And I am sort of, I'm shaking so hard I can barely type this. But underneath it all there's this other feeling, this dark, quiet little hum that feels powerful. Like I finally won something. Please, someone tell me this is just the adrenaline. Tell me this feeling goes away. It all feels like a movie playing back in my head, but the details are so sharp they hurt. The garage smelled like old gasoline and damp concrete, a smell that's been baked into the walls for 20 years. The single fluorescent bulb overhead hummed and flickered, casting everything in a sickly, buzzing yellow light. I remember the exact pattern of the oil stain near the back tire of the sedan, a dark, sprawling Rorschach test on the floor. I'd been meaning to clean that up for weeks. I was even wearing my old, worn-out sneakers, and I could feel the cold of the floor seeping through the thin rubber soles, making my toes ache. I'd told Kevin I was selling the car. Our car, the first big thing we ever bought together a decade ago. It was a rolling monument to every promise we'd broken. He loved it with a stupid, stubborn pride. I hated it. Maybe that's what set him off. He came in through the side door, the one from the yard, and I remember the specific, grating sound it made when he slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt. A heavy, final thunk. That sound sealed the room. He looked awful. His shirt was wrinkled, his face was pale and puffy, like he'd been sleeping in his truck for a few days. He was a ghost haunting the edges of my life, and now he was here. My workbench is always a disaster, you have to understand. I'm not one of those neat, organized people. I was trying to replace a busted hose clamp on the sedan earlier in the day, a pathetic attempt to make it look better for the sale, and I gave up in frustration, just left everything out. Sockets, screwdrivers, greasy rags, my hands were still faintly grimy under the nails, and the wrench. It was a big heavy-duty pipe wrench, the kind my dad used to use. I can still see it so clearly. It was lying on a copy of the car's manual, open to a page showing a diagram of the cooling system. It feels important for some reason that you know this. It wasn't just a random weapon, it was part of the scene, part of my life, a tool for fixing things that were broken. He pushed me back step by step, his voice a low growl that I felt more than heard. I wasn't thinking, I was just reacting, my feet stumbling backward over the uneven floor. My back hit the particle board of the workbench, the edge dug into my spine hard. He was shouting, but the words were just noise, just bass and fury. His spit hit my face, and all I could see was the gun, and beyond it, the glint of the overhead light on the chrome of that wrench. It was like a spotlight was on it. He was blocking the door to the house, the door to the yard was locked. There was nowhere to go, it was the workbench or the floor. People say you get tunnel vision in moments like that. It's true. My world shrank to the size of that gun, his snarling face, and that beautiful, heavy, solid piece of steel lying right next to my hand. It was the only thing in the entire universe that wasn't moving, the only thing that felt real and certain. It wasn't a choice. It was like my arm had its own brain, its own survival instinct that had been dormant my whole life. It just reached, wow, I just woke up on the couch and saw all the replies. I can't thank you, to most of you anyway, just knowing I'm not alone in feeling this way, this weird mix of terror and something else, it helps more than you know. But I'm seeing a few questions pop up again and again in the comments, and I guess I should clear them up before people start getting the wrong idea. I can't believe I have to do this, but okay. For the handful of people asking why I didn't just run out the garage's side door, he locked it. That was the first thing he did when he came in. He slammed it shut and I heard the deadbolt slide across. It was a heavy, solid thunk, a sound that said, "We're not done here." I told the police this. It's in my statement. There was no way out that way and he was standing between me and the door to the house. I was boxed in, completely. And for the others, the ones questioning how I managed to, how I was so effective with the wrench, I don't know what to tell you. Have you ever had a cornered animal hiss at you? It doesn't think, it doesn't plan, it just reacts. Adrenaline is a powerful, terrifying thing. You don't aim, you don't strategize, you just swing. You swing for your life because a gun is pointed at your chest. I'm not a trained fighter. I'm a 46-year-old woman who serves coffee for a living. I was just trying not to die on a dirty concrete floor. Sorry, I'm exhausted. And I guess I'm a little angry that I have to defend the way I chose to survive. I'm going to try and make some tea. The police are supposed to be coming back in a bit to pick up the evidence. The doorbell chimed, a cheerful two-note sound that felt obscene in the dead quiet of the house. It made me jump so hard that I almost dropped the cold, untouched mug of tea I was holding. For a wild second, I thought it was Kevin, somehow back from the hospital, whole and angry. But it was just a police car parked at the curb, the same one from last night. A different officer got out this time. He was older, with kind, tired eyes and a salt and pepper mustache. His name tag read ORTIZ. He didn't have the same tense energy as the younger cops from the night before. He looked more like a man who'd seen too many garages, too many arguments gone wrong. "Miss Wheeler, I'm Officer Ortiz," he said, holding up his badge. His voice was calm and low. "I'm sorry to bother you again. I just need to do a quick follow-up, pick up the item for the evidence log. It'll only take a minute." The item, he meant the wrench. I nodded numbly and led him through the house. The path to the garage felt like a mile long. I could feel his presence behind me, steady and professional, and it made my skin crawl. He wasn't judging me, but his job was to look, to see. And I suddenly felt like every surface in my house was screaming a story I didn't want told. The garage was brighter in the daylight, which somehow made it look worse. The oil stain was just an oil stain. The clutter on the workbench was just junk. In the wrench, it was still there, right where I'd dropped it. There was a small, dark reddish-brown smudge near the head. I hadn't noticed that last night. Ortiz put on a pair of blue latex gloves with a practiced snap. He didn't say anything as he carefully picked up the wrench, holding it by the very end of the handle, and slid it into a long, clear plastic evidence bag. He sealed it with a piece of red tape and meticulously wrote the date, time, and my name on the label with a Sharpie. The whole process was so sterile, so procedural. It was just another object to him. He was done in less than 5 minutes. He followed me back to the front door, holding the bagged wrench in a way that was both casual and careful. "All right, Miss Wheeler, that's all we need for now," he said, pausing on the doorstep. He gave me a sympathetic, weary smile. "You try and get some rest." "You were very, very lucky." I just nodded. I wanted him to go. But he lingered for a second, a professional trying to offer a sliver of human comfort. "I mean it," he said, his voice dropping a little. "We had the lab take a look at his firearm first thing. The rounds in the magazine, they were junk, useless. Corroded straight through with moisture. Looked like they'd been sitting in a damp toolbox for a decade. There was no way a single one of them could have fired. Not a chance." My heart, which had been hammering, suddenly went still. The air froze in my lungs. "But here's the strange part," he continued, shaking his head slightly as if at a peculiar puzzle. "The firing pin mechanism, it was clean as a whistle. Recently oiled too, you could tell. It's just an odd thing to see, an amateur's mistake, you know. Someone who watches a video on how to maintain the action but doesn't know the first thing about ammunition. They take care of the moving parts but forget about the part that actually does the work." He shrugged, oblivious. "Anyway, good thing for you he was an idiot. You take care of yourself." He turned and walked back to his car. I stood there, my hand on the doorknob, watching him drive away. The sound of his engine faded, leaving a silence that was louder than any scream. I closed the door. The click of the latch echoed in the empty house, recently oiled. The words weren't just words. They were stones, dropping one by one into the placid, carefully constructed pool of my story, and the ripples were heading straight for me. The click of the latch. Glig. Recently oiled. The words weren't stones, they were keys. They unlocked a room in my mind I had sealed shut, a room I had bricked over and pretended wasn't there. The carefully constructed movie in my head, the one with the heroic survivor and the evil monster, flickered, sputtered, and died, leaving a black screen. And in the darkness, a different film started to play. It started a week ago. I was cleaning out Kevin's truck, getting it ready to sell. He'd left it parked on the street after our last big fight. I was just supposed to be getting rid of the fast food wrappers and empty cigarette packs. But under the passenger seat, tucked away in an old stained Crown Royal bag, I found it, the gun. And next to it, a small cardboard box of ammunition. I remember opening the box right there in the cab of the truck. The bullets looked wrong. They were dull, with tiny specks of green and white corrosion blooming on the brass casings. I grew up in the country, my dad had guns. I knew what damp, useless ammunition looked like. A wave of something not fear but a cold, sharp opportunity went through me. The new movie kept playing. It showed me later that night, sitting at my kitchen table with the gun. The house was quiet. I'd put a towel down so I wouldn't scratch the wood. I'd pulled up a video on my phone, how to clean and oil a handgun. I didn't have proper gun oil, but I had a little bottle of clear, fine oil for my sewing machine. I remember my hands shaking, not from fear, but from a strange, focused excitement. I fumbled with the slide just like the man in the video showed. I didn't clean the whole thing. I didn't care about the whole thing. I just put a single glistening drop of sewing machine oil right on the firing pin mechanism. I worked the slide back and forth, listening to the smooth, clean sound it made. A healthy sound, a believable sound. The plan bloomed in my head, fully formed and ugly and perfect. I knew Kevin would come back, he always did. I would leave the garage door unlocked. I would make sure the workbench was messy. I would put the corroded, useless bullets back in the magazine and put the magazine back in the gun. I would leave the gun in his truck, where he'd eventually find it again. And I would wait. I didn't want the gun to fire. God, no, I just wanted it to try. I wanted the sound, the click, a sound that proved his intent. A sound that would be my witness, my unimpeachable alibi. The clicks were the whole point. They were the climax of the play I was writing. I would be the terrified victim who got a lucky break. He would be the monster whose own incompetence saved me, and then I would defend myself. A push, a shove, maybe I'd throw something at him, something to make it look good. The wrench was just a prop that was heavier than I remembered, a prop I swung with a force that didn't come from adrenaline but from years of quiet, simmering rage. I didn't just want to be a victim, I wanted to win, I wanted to see him on the floor for once. The movie in my head finally ended. I was left sitting in the silent house, the truth of it all collapsing on top of me. I hadn't been lucky, I had been a playwright, a stage manager, an architect of a perfect, self-serving little tragedy. And I had horribly, horribly miscalculated the final act. I've been sitting here for hours reading all of your comments. The supportive ones, the angry ones, the ones that called me a hero, the ones that called me a liar. I need to add something. I need to correct the record because the truth is so much worse than any of you guessed. The gun wasn't a surprise, I have to be honest about that. I found it in his truck a week ago, tucked away in an old cloth bag. And when I saw the ammunition, I knew it was useless. The casings were green and fuzzy with corrosion, they were dead. I knew he couldn't have shot me even if he'd wanted to. And that's where the idea started, this cold, clear, brilliant little idea. I took the gun, I took it back to the house that night, and I sat at my kitchen table and I oiled the firing pin. I used the oil I keep for my sewing machine, I just wanted it to work smoothly. I just wanted the click to sound real, don't you see? The whole thing was a stage, my stage. I knew he'd come, I knew he'd find the gun I'd so carefully put back for him. I knew he would threaten me with it. I needed him to, I needed that sound, that click, click, it was my proof. It was my perfect, unimpeachable story. He would try to kill me and by some miracle the gun would fail. I would be the victim, the survivor, the one everyone felt sorry for. The wrench wasn't part of the plan, not really. It was a prop maybe, something I might throw to make the struggle look more convincing. But when he was standing there shouting and I heard those two beautiful, perfect clicks that I had engineered, something else took over. It wasn't adrenaline, it was rage, a decade of it. All the little insults, the quiet humiliations, the way he made me feel so small, all of that was in my hand when I picked up the wrench. The sound it made wasn't a click, it was a dull, heavy, wet thud. I felt the impact all the way up to my shoulder. I didn't plan for that feeling, or for the way he just folded. I got a call from the hospital an hour ago. He's still in a coma. The doctors are using words like significant brain swelling. They're talking about long-term outcomes. So that question I asked at the beginning, my question about feeling that sick satisfaction, I have my answer now. It wasn't a survivor's relief. It was the pride of an architect admiring her work, right before the whole building collapsed on top of everyone. I wasn't the victim in a horror movie. I was the director, and I just found out my monster is never getting back up.